I want to take this opportunity to welcome you all to this week's virtual drasha. I'd like to begin first by thanking those families who have dedicated the drasha, to thank Ed and Faith Wolf and family for dedicating the drasha in memory of our beloved father, grandfather, great-grandfather Cyrus Wolf Shalom Ben Tzvi Hirsch, to thank our week of learning sponsors Alan Wiseman for dedicating the drasha in memory of his beloved wife Rita Ruth Rivka Rachel Bas Zachariah, and Bernie and Sonia Kozlovsky for dedicating the learning this week in honor of the birth of their grandson Aryeh Leib ben Yosef Mordechai to Penina and Yoey Shacht. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshamas will have an aliyah. This little boy will grow up l'Torah, u'lechuppah, u'lemaisim tovim. We thank again these families for their dedication, their support, and their generosity. Manishtana hadrasha hazeh mikol hadrashas. So you'll say, how is this drasha different than all of the ones that came before it? Well, first of all, on a normal week, I share with you some insights on the parsha, some ideas related to the weekly Torah portion. But of course, today we find ourselves just a few short days away from Rosh Hashana. A few short days away from the beginning of the new year. And I think we all know that Rosh Hashana is not simply a calendrical reality. It's not simply that 5780 comes to an end, 5781 comes to a new beginning, and that's what we're celebrating, or that's what we're observing. But we recognize that embedded in this calendrical change, embedded in this shifting of time, is an opportunity to create metamorphic change within ourselves, is an opportunity to look and to reevaluate how we live, what we do, who we are. And if we're doing great, then let's just do it better. And but if we're not doing so great, and if there are things that are in a state of disrepair, things that are broken, let's find the courage to fix it. Rosh Hashanah offers us the beautiful oasis in time to introspect, to look deep within ourselves, and to ask ourselves if we're really living life to its fullest, if we're really maximizing our potential. That's the gift of these days. And I think when we reflect on the past year, for most of us, there's two parts to the year. There's pre-COVID and COVID. Pre-COVID, again, were the months leading up to March, and then March until now, COVID. Halavai will get to post-COVID also, Meretz Hashem, B'Sha'at Tova Mitzlachos. But those are the two parts of our year. And I would venture to say for many of us, the part of the year that was pre-COVID is like Hayinu Kechomim. It's like a different dream. I barely even remember. What does it mean to have a regular day? What does it mean to go to work in a normal fashion, to go ahead and have a commute, schools, go to a supermarket without thinking twice about it? Those things which were part of the pre-COVID part of the year feel like such a distant memory. And so we come to Rosh Hashanah and we reflect on the last number of months, I think with a heavy focus on the month since March, the month since everything changed so much. And I'll tell you on a personal level, when coronavirus first began, and we began to see the sweeping changes, for me personally, from the closure of our shul to the way I changed teaching to an online platform, to schools, to everything, to see people. Some people, it was incredible. Some people's parnasa, their livelihood, evaporated overnight. And some people, Baruch Hashem, have become busier than ever. It's very dramatic to see how the change has gone in so many different directions. And so I think that when all of this first began, I'll just say on a personal level, I thought to myself, this is going to be a major pivotal moment for me. That with the world changing in such a dramatic way, there's no question that I am going to change as well. And I was convinced of it. And I even put together a plan for personalistic change. And I'm going to work on this, I'm going to work on that, and this is going to change. And I was so sure that by the time the vaccine would come, that mamish, not only would the vaccine heal our bodies, not only would the vaccine take away the threat of virus, but I felt like my neshama, my soul, myself would be on such a different level. And again, this is the time for reflection, the time for honest introspection. If I look at myself now, the truth is that change really hasn't occurred. At least not the way that I thought it would be. And the struggles that I had on a spiritual level, on a personal level before March are very much still in existence for me now. And the truth is not only that, I feel in fact in certain areas that maybe I've regressed. It's interesting. I find myself sometimes getting much more upset or annoyed or a little bit sometimes of a shorter fuse with things than I had before. I'm sure I could attribute it to a whole variety of different things. Newfound stress, changes. No one likes dealing with stress or change all that much. But as I enter into these days of Rosh Hashanah, there's a profound feeling of both disappointment and fear. Disappointment in that I'm sad that I haven't tapped into that dynamic of change. When you see so much change happening in the world around you, when you see that tidal wave of change, I wanted to ride it. I wanted to feel it. I wanted to allow it to come into me and to seep into me and to allow myself to experience. And I'm being honest, I haven't tapped into that yet. I haven't worked on myself to affect that positive change yet. And then there's fear. And this is going to sound very strange. The fear is that the virus is going to be over, the vaccine is going to come, this is going to be a distant memory, and I will not have utilized this takufa, this period of time, for any type of profound, cathartic, metamorphic change. You know, Winston Churchill said, never let a good crisis go to waste. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Nothing gets you to rethink things. Nothing gets you to change like a crisis. So there's a part of me that's fearful, personally, that is this all going to be over before I have the opportunity to tap into what's happening. The world is changing. Everything is changing. All of the things that for so many of us have been a constant in our lives, nothing is a constant. And by the way, it's not just coronavirus. It's everything, even since racial unrest has gripped our country. And you see movements like defund the police or other things like that, whatever your personal feelings are on it, everything is changing and everything is shifting. And the world is, and on a positive level, we witnessed the historic agreement yesterday between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and the Kingdom of Bahrain. And everything is changing. Someone sent me an incredible picture of Mincha happening on the front lawn of the White House. Mincha happening in front. There's so much change that's happening in our world in every different corner. And here I am sitting a little bit nervous. I'm going to miss out on it. I'm going to miss out on it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending a tidal wave of change in every corner of the world, in everything we knew. I'm talking about it the whole day. Who doesn't talk about coronavirus the whole day? Or who doesn't talk about political upheaval all day? Or who doesn't talk about, again, I talk about this stuff all day. I can tell you what you have to do in quarantine, what you have to do here, what you have to do there. Have I tapped into the dynamic of change? And so on a personal level, I come into the Yamim Noraim with fear that am I going to let this incredible opportunity go to waste? Am I going to let a good crisis on a personal level go to waste? So as I begin to organize my thoughts for the Yamim Noraim, I've taken just a little bit of time to reflect on how can we go into Yom Tiv in the midst of a pandemic and use this crisis as a catalyst for change. How can we take everything that is happening all around us and some way, somehow tap into this, learn from this, grow from this, so that we don't let the crisis go to waste? Because, I have news for you, and you all know this. There's going to come a time, Hashem B'Shat is going to have a vaccine, and this is going to be a distant memory. The same way that all the diseases of the past are distant memories now, Baruch Hashem, the ones that have vaccines, we won't remember it. So whether it's 6 months, 2 months, or a year, one thing is clear, which is in the not so distant future, coronavirus will be a memory. We'll talk about it, we'll reminisce about it, we'll talk about it for a little bit of time, and then human nature is we're just simply going to move on. The economy will rebound. It's not a financial prediction, it's just the way of the world, right? The economy will rebound, life will go back to normal, our schools will be normal, our shuls will be normal, everything at some point in time will be normal. But am I going to go back to normal also? Or can I tap into the Yamim Noraim during a pandemic, Rosh Hashana, in the midst of a pandemic, and learn from the pandemic lessons, ideas, concepts to help me become a better person? So I'd like to share with you a couple of ideas that I've been thinking about as we enter into Rosh Hashana 5781 Tafshin Pei Aleph. Lesson number 1 is the importance of the mask. We all know the importance of a mask, right? Again, if you're like me, you have multiple masks at key locations, whether it's in your car, in your office, in your house, at your makom in the shul. You have it. We all know. And we all know again that the importance of wearing a mask is that it goes ahead and prevents droplets. That when I speak, just there are droplets that come out, that exit my body as I speak. And so again, those droplets could be carriers, could carry the virus. And if I'm talking to you, even if we're sharing Torah, even if we're talking about good things, about how we're going to save the world, if I'm too close and uncovered, I could chas v'shalom spread disease to you. And it's interesting because I've seen it myself. When you're wearing a mask, for most of us, I would eventually, maybe doctors or nurses are more used to this because they lived with masks even in their pre-corona days. But I find it very difficult to communicate in a mask. Very difficult to speak in a mask. On Shabbos, I give a very short Devar Torah. At least I think it's very short. And again, I find it very difficult. And I've come to realize one important thing, which is, I think that we think a lot more before we speak when wearing a mask. That what the mask has done is it's made me, to a certain degree, inaudible, a little bit more difficult to understand. And so on a personal level, I find myself thinking more about what I want to say. Whereas in my pre-mask days, a funny thought, an idea, a little zinger came along, no problem. Now I have to really think about, is it worth it to say it when I'm probably going to have to repeat it a second time, a third time? I'm going to get my mask filled with whatever schmutz is coming out of my mouth. I'm going to get overheated because I've yet to find a breathable mask, despite having spent too much money on mask apparel, yet to find a truly breathable mask. And what an incredible lesson. The mask has taught us to think before we speak. To think before we speak. The spoken word has become denigrated and demeaned in our current society. If you don't like someone or something, you go ahead and you take to Twitter, and you take to Facebook, or you take to whatever medium you want, and you can blast anyone and everyone. And by the way, you could do so with profanities, but the good news is you don't even have to write out full words. You could use abbreviated words, abbreviated sentences, emojis. You could spell out a whole thing. And we've abused our koach hadibur. We've abused that which makes us special. What differentiates us from the rest of the world, from the rest of the living beings, is koach hadibur, the ability to speak. And I think that the mask sensitizes us. I would imagine I'm not alone in this dynamic. That it's not always comfortable and it's not always easy. Ask the Bali Tefillah how difficult it is sometimes to lead a tzibur when wearing a mask. The mask sensitizes us to how we speak and what we say. And in a society, and especially again in our current political climate, where words are just used to demolish and deconstruct anyone and everyone who doesn't agree with your narrow view of the world and your narrow view of life, how sensitive we must become to the spoken word. The mask has been a powerful tool for me to really think about what I'm going to say. I get up on Shabbos and I give a little drasha, a little Dvar Torah. I really think about what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Do I need to reinforce, not to reinforce, repeat, not repeat? We have to be sensitive with our words. How many times do we say things to people that we think it's funny? I think it's jocular. I think it's humorous. But it's hurtful. It's hurtful. How many times do we make jokes at the expense of other people and we chuckle, and they might chuckle externally also, but inside they're so hurt? Or how many times do we give words of rebuke, words of negativity, words of animosity towards someone? Sometimes you have to critique and criticize. Sometimes that happens. But you have to critique and criticize with kindness. There's a way to use your words in a powerful way. There's a way to use your words in a way that doesn't make a person feel like 2 cents. Or how many times do you get angry at someone for something that they did and you just want to rip into them? You just literally, again, want to unleash your verbal torrent on them. How could you do this? You're a fool. How many times have we had this conversation? Why do you keep on making this mistake? And whether you want to do this to a spouse, whether you want to do it to a child, whether you want to do it to a friend, a co-worker, a subordinate, whoever it is, stop. Stop. Our dibur are so easy to be critical, and it's so easy to be hurtful, and it's so easy to be negative. But our speech is what makes us human. And if you abuse it, then you're a cow. If you abuse it, then you're a dog. And if you abuse it, then you're a donkey. If you abuse your koach hadibur, you're just an animal that walks on 2 feet instead of 4. Appreciate the importance of the mask. But when it comes to proper use of speech, it's not just about not using our speech in a negative way. There's also positive. How many times do we have the opportunity to build someone up through positive speech? Give a compliment. Give a good word of reinforcement. You know someone is down. Someone's down. Give them a positive pick-me-up. And if it's not with a spoken word, a text message, a WhatsApp, an email, there are so many ways. I'll tell you just on a personal level. You know how many times, again, I'm having just a difficult day and someone just says something nice. Someone says something nice, and Baruch Hashem, I have a lot of wonderful things going for me in life. I don't necessarily need someone to say something nice, but what a difference it makes. What a difference it makes when someone says a good morning, when someone says a good Shabbos, when someone says a hello, whether you know them or you don't know them. What a difference it makes when I know someone's having a difficult day, and I call them up and say, hey, just want to tell you hi. Hope you're doing well. I know things are difficult. Just want to let you know that I'm here. How powerful that is. The mask teaches us, yes, how to limit our words and how to be careful not to use our speech in a deconstructive fashion, because if you do, I'm just a two-legged animal. But we must also remember that it's not just enough to avoid using your speech in a negative way. I have to use my speech in a positive way. Kumasei. Do something positive. Do something great. Use your words to build yourself up. Use your words to build the other up. Use your words in a positive, dynamic fashion. Use it in the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu intended us to. A second lesson is the need for distance. It's interesting to see that everything in our world now is 6 feet. 6 feet. Everything is 6 feet, right? It's 6 feet between the chairs in shul. It's 6 feet. Even when we're conversing with friends, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet. Distance. And again, what's the logic? Same idea. Because the idea is that if we create a little bit of distance, we also go ahead and distance ourselves from potentially inadvertently harming one another. Because if we're talking in too close proximity, and I didn't learn the lesson of the mask, so I could end up going ahead and chas v'shalom again, spreading something to you, you spreading something to me. So we distance in order to avoid harm. We distance in order to avoid danger. And I thought, what a powerful lesson, the need for distance. How many times in life do we struggle with things? And we recognize that they're bad for us. We recognize that ultimately, again, it's not good. But yet, I tell myself, I'm not going to sin. I'm going to stop doing this negative thing. But yet I don't distance myself from the things that led up to sin. Meaning what? Rabbi Soloveitchik explains very beautifully. Sin doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not the pshat that just, poof, you sin. If I think about any avera that I committed, what I could do is, if I sit for a few moments in quiet, I could trace back all of the steps that led me to that sin. It's not the pshat that I got out of bed, said moda'ani, and boom, I sinned. It's that I got out of bed, I said moda'ani. I did this, and this. And by the way, maybe the first 3 thises are totally innocuous and fine. But at a certain point in time, things took a turn and escalated to the point that those smaller actions manifest themselves in sin. So what's tshuva? Tshuva is not simply the stoppage of sin. It's not simply stop sinning. Tshuva is the process where I identify the steps that led up to sin, and I stop myself in the beginning of those steps. Because if I'm taking the same steps that led up to sin, then I'm going to end up with the same result. In other words, remember again, if I keep making the same choices, doing the same things, I'm going to have the same exact results. Tshuva is, people think, and this is why often we don't make traction in tshuva, or we don't get traction in tshuva. People think that tshuva just means stop sinning. No. Tshuva means to identify, how did I get here? And how do I distance myself from the factors and the triggers that led me up to this? A very simple mashal. If a person is a recovering alcoholic, person suffers from alcoholism and they're in recovery, so everyone knows, let's say, so the alcoholic is passing by, the recovering alcoholic is passing by a bar, and he says, you know what, I don't want a beer, I don't want a glass of wine, I don't want a shot of scotch, I just want to get a bottle of water. Bottle of water, come here. If the alcoholic were to ask you, the person in recovery were to ask you, is this a good idea? So anyone would say, no, it's a terrible idea. Don't go into that place. I'm just going to get a bottle of water. I have enough self-restraint, enough personal will that I'm not going to do anything bad. I know myself. They say, don't do it. It's not a good idea. Because to put yourself in that makom, to put yourself in that place, to give yourself that exposure is setting yourself up for failure. So how many times in life I know what I have to change, and I know how I have to change it, when I think about it, I realize that in order to change that negative behavior, I have to take like a number of steps back. And it's not just the pshat that I have to alter the behavior. Maybe I can't hang around with the same people. Maybe I can't go to the same places. Maybe I can't allow the same influences into my home or into my life. Maybe I can't engage in the same forms of entertainment. When I begin to suddenly see all the steps, that's when kind of things fall apart a little bit. But we've learned over the age of coronavirus that distance, there is a need for distance. A need for distance. Because if you go ahead and you talk with your friend, and mamish panim el panim, you could be the greatest tzaddik, he could be the greatest tzaddik, but you're putting yourselves in danger. You could decide that you want to stop sinning, but if I'm not willing to distance myself from those things that are the catalysts, that are the triggers, that are the steps that lead to sin, unfortunately, it's only a matter of time until I find myself right back in that same dark place of transgression, misdeed, and spiritual failure. Lesson number 2 is the need for distance. Lesson number 3 is the search for the vaccine. I have yet to hear someone who said, I don't think we should look for a vaccine. I think it's an incredible waste of time, an incredible waste of money. Let's just move on with life and gamarnu. I'm sure there are people who do say that, but certainly you wouldn't hear that out of the mouth of a thinking, regular individual. Why? Because you all recognize that vaccine is such an incredibly important antidote to the problem we are facing. So many times in life, I know that I have problems. I know that I have challenges, but I'm simply unwilling to address it. It's not that I don't know how to solve it. It's not that I maybe don't even want to solve it, but maybe I just lack the drive or the push or the want or the desire. We see how much time and how much energy is going into finding a proper vaccine. If you have a problem in life, fix it. Don't allow it to fester. Because what happens when you allow your problems to fester? So we can now look for a vaccine. And I'm sure at a certain point in time, perhaps the world will establish a universal herd immunity, and we'll be fine, and we'll get past this. How many will die? How much more will the economy be affected? How many other negative repercussions will be there? Okay, no one's willing to pay that price because it doesn't make sense. Because I'd so much rather solve the problem. I'd so much rather develop the vaccine and know that I have an answer to the problem than just pretend like the problem doesn't exist and wait for it to solve itself. Because in life, problems never solve themselves. And even when they do, there's so much collateral damage that comes in the wake of that unintended problem solving. So what a metaphor for life. I have problems. I'll say it. I have problems. I have challenges. I have deficiencies. And so I have a choice. I could ignore them, pretend like they don't exist, explain them away, justify them away, or I can look for a vaccine. Or I could once and for all finally find the courage to be able to develop the antidote to my personalistic disease. I could finally find the courage to look in the mirror and to say, you know what, I'm great. I do a lot of great stuff. I accomplish a lot of great things. I have many redeeming qualities, but I also have some faults. I also have some failures. And I also have some significant personality issues. And now I'm going to find the courage I'm going to find the courage to resolve them. I'm going to find the courage to cure them. I'm going to find the courage ultimately to develop my own personalistic vaccine. And the interesting thing about vaccines is vaccines go through multiple stages, multiple trials, till they finally get the point that it's ready to be tested on people. And sometimes, which I think just happened recently in the news, there's a vaccine that gets to human trials, it fails. It fails. Sometimes in life you try to do tshuva. Sometimes in life you try to develop your personal vaccine, you try to address your issues, and you fail. It happens. So many of us get on the tshuva wagon just to fall off. Sometimes when we fall off, I fall off even worse off than I was before. Because sometimes not every vaccine works, or not every vaccine works the first time around. So sometimes you have to retweak the formulation. Sometimes you have to retweak some of the ingredients. And sometimes the vaccine itself is just never good. Sometimes that form of tshuva just didn't work. I need to try something else. But dear friends, we must never stop looking for the vaccine. We all have problems. We all have challenges. Each of us is broken in our own unique way. Some of our brokenness is visible and apparent to everyone. Some of us only have things that are broken that only I know about. And some of us try to delude ourselves into thinking that nothing's broken, everything's okay. No one is all okay, and no one is totally unbroken. No one is whole. We all have pieces that need to be cured. We all have pieces that need to be fixed, and we all have aspects that need to be remedied. Look for your vaccine. As the world looks, and billions of dollars will be spent in developing and then procuring a vaccine, let's look for the vaccine for our internal illnesses as well. Let's look to cure that which is ailing us and stop ignoring our illness as if it does not exist. Lesson number 4. Do not live with the anxiety of the unknown. If there's one thing that coronavirus has taught us is it's really difficult to plan for stuff. How many weddings happened? At Baruch Hashem weddings, couples got engaged and they planned a beautiful Hashana. 200 people. That, you remember, 200 people was like a small Hashana. That was a small wedding before Corona. 200, mamish. So 200, 300, 500, 500, 600, 700. And then what happened? That Chassan and Kala was supposed to have a 700 person wedding, got married in someone's backyard with 9 other people, right? A million of people. Or other life cycle events that should have occurred with large numbers of people took place over Zoom with barely anyone in attendance. Coronavirus has taught us that we really don't know what the future holds. And this is important because so many of us experience the anxiety of the unknown. In other words, we're faced with opportunities to do great things. We're faced with opportunities, right? We're faced with moments where we could fully self-actualize, and we don't take that because we're not sure. I don't know how it's going to work out. I don't know if I'm going to be successful. I would like to undertake this endeavor, but there's this risk, this, that. And again, I would like to take this opportunity, but how do I know that it's really going to work out? What I have right now, maybe it's mediocre, but it's predictable. You want me to take that has the capacity to be great, but it's totally unpredictable. And so many of us settle for the mediocrity of life because we have that anxiety of the unknown. But what coronavirus has taught us is, in reality, it's always the unknown. As Rabbi Nachman of Breslov points out, we know nothing about tomorrow. We know nothing even about the next hour. The only thing I control is right now, this moment. And therefore the Rebbe teaches us, live life maximizing your moments. We miss out on so many opportunities because of analysis paralysis. We miss out on so many opportunities because I go through the list of everything that can go wrong. Okay, if you go through the list of everything that could go wrong, chances are if you go through the list of every single thing that can go wrong, the logical conclusion is do nothing at all, because that's the only thing that's not risky. Inactivity is totally no risk, because inactivity, nothing's going to happen except you atrophy and slowly die away, slowly fade away. Don't let the anxiety of the unknown prevent you from taking good chances in life. Don't let the anxiety of the unknown hold you back from embracing and seizing life opportunities. Don't let the anxiety of unknown keep you shackled to a present of mediocrity. Coronavirus has taught us that we cannot plan for the next day, for we know not what the future holds. Too many people get scared from that. I say that is the most empowering lesson. Because if I don't know what the future holds, guess what? I can't really plan for it. The only thing I can do is maximize my right now. Don't let your anxiety of the unknown hold you back from accomplishing great things. Lesson number 5. Take responsibility for your children. For those of us with young children who are blessed with younger children, school-age children who are home, I think many of us saw that, especially last year. It's already, Baruch Hashem, the schools are open now. But last year, I think we saw that when there was all of this distance learning, that parents, many of us, really went back to school. Whether it was trying to figure out how to go ahead and deal with different devices, or recognize that we don't have enough internet bandwidth. And nobody had enough internet bandwidth to run 94 devices simultaneously at one time. But I'm trying to figure out, I'm getting on my neighbors, I'm getting on this one, the car, So we went back to school, and for some of us, distance learning, some schools did it right, some schools barely did it at all. And so sometimes as parents, we found ourselves, being like a surrogate teacher to our kids, getting material, trying to help out, trying to teach. And I think it taught us an incredible lesson, because too many times in life we look at the school or the yeshiva as the surrogate parent. It's important to remember that the pasuk says, "V'shinamtom levanecha." The obligation of chinuch, the obligation of educating a child, falls upon a parent. It's just that over the ages, we outsourced that responsibility to schools, to yeshivas, to day schools. And the reason we do that is because many of us have to go out to work. We have to earn a parnasa, so I can't stay home and teach my kid. Sometimes we lack the knowledge or the pedagogical tools to be able to impart knowledge. But dear friends, it's important to know, you are the primary teacher for your child. Your child's chinuch, the value system your child acquires, is up to you. The school is there to instill them with information. A school, a yeshiva, is there to give your child skills, to give your child knowledge, to give your child a positive sense of self-confidence, blanket them with love, with acceptance, with appreciation, and make them feel great about themselves so that they can go out and accomplish great things. But as a parent, I am obligated to teach my child honesty, integrity, morality, ethics, what it means to be obedient to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what it means to be obedient to halacha, what it means to live a life according to the Shulchan Aruch, what it means to be part of a community, what it means to be a Torah Jew. That's my job. That's my job. It's not my kid's Rebbe's job. It's not the Mora's job. It's my job. Hopefully the Rebbe and the Mora are good role models. Hopefully the teachers are all good, upright, honest individuals who are all good role models. But I am responsible for the chinuch I give to my children. The value system that my children grow up with, or chas v'shalom don't grow up with, is up to me as the parent. And it doesn't matter how much tuition you pay. It doesn't matter how generous you are to the most dose, which is incredible. At the end of the day, the parent is the parent is the parent. So many times when our children fail, which sometimes happens, we blame the schools. And sometimes maybe the schools play a contributing role. But as a parent, it is my job to raise a precious neshama. It is my job to raise a holy son and a holy daughter. It is my job to instill within a child a sense of inspiration, a sense of love for Yiddishkeit. And this is so important because we're talking openly and honestly. I've seen it too often that people during this period of time have regressed. They've regressed. Whether it's in behaviors we engage in, forms of recreation or entertainment we engage in, not going to shul in the same way that we used to. Some people have grown and some people have slipped. Now, as an adult, it's up to you to do whatever you want to do with your life. That's between you and the Ribbono Shalom. But if there are precious neshamas who you brought into this world, who are depending on you and looking to you for their chinuch, for their guidance, they're looking to you as their role model, I have to get it together. I've got to get it together. And if it's not for me, I have to do it for my child. Because at the end of the day, no one is responsible for the chinuch of your child like you. Lesson number 5 is take responsibility for your children. Model the right kind of behaviors. And ask yourself, sometimes it's a hard question to ask. Do I model the right kind of behavior for my child? Do I dress the right way? And when I say dress the right way, I'm not referring to just specific details about lengths or this. I mean, how do I conduct myself? How do I comport myself? Do I talk the right way? What happens at our Shabbos table? How do my kids see me using my free time? How do they see my commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? My commitment to Torah? My commitment to Am Yisrael? How do they see it? How do they see me deal with my money? Am I charitable? How do they see me deal with my friends? And who are my friends? Who are the people I surround myself with? Who are the people I identify with? If you ask my child, who are my role models? Ask your child that question. Who's daddy's role model? Who's mommy's role model? It'll be fascinating to see what answers they give. Who do your children think you look up to? Take responsibility for your children because you and you alone are the sole custodian of their neshama, the sole custodian of their spiritual identity. You and you alone are responsible for imbuing the proper ideas, ideals, and morals and ethics into those beautiful neshamas. And finally, lesson number 6, the power of a simple gesture. I know we've seen it in our kehillah, and I'm sure many have seen it, that during this period of isolation, especially in the beginning of coronavirus, when we were really shut down and separated and the shul was closed, and the power of a phone call, the power of lifting up the phone and saying hello, just a simple little gesture of recognizing someone else's humanity, the power of a package Erev Shabbos, the power of a bouquet of flowers, the power of a simple gesture of reaching out. It was amazing for me to see, before coronavirus, you make a phone call to someone, oh, that was nice, no, but good, we're done, right? Okay, I remember for 3 seconds. Coronavirus, you make a phone call to someone who's shut in and isolated, it's like you're Ed McMahon showing up with the big publisher's clearinghouse check, for those of you who remember that, right? It's like you gave them $1 million. You called me? You remembered me? You dropped off some flowers? You dropped off a challah? You dropped off a this? Like you gave them millions of dollars. Because what we recognized is that in the moments of social isolation, when we didn't have each other, that which we took for granted, the smallest gesture of reaching out to someone, the smallest gesture of friendship, but it's not just a gesture of friendship, it's a recognition that people haven't been forgotten. We have a dedicated group of women in our shul who, Baruch Hashem, make sure that many of our older members receive beautiful Shabbos packages. And I will tell you that when this first started, I got a phone call from one of our senior members who said, I was so scared that I would have been forgotten. I can't come to shul, I don't really come out. I was scared that I was forgotten. And the shul reminded me that I'm not forgotten. We're not perfect, and I'm sure there are people who do feel forgotten, and probably people we didn't connect with, probably people I didn't connect with. It's impossible to get not impossible. Sometimes we don't get everyone. But the power of a small gesture, the smallest things we do. Pledge to yourself to do one small act of chesed every day. Don't pledge to yourself to do a big act of chesed, because if I pledge to do a big act of chesed every day, not going to happen. But a small act of chesed, one phone call, one text message, one reach out, Erev Shabbos, one bouquet of flowers, one little plate of cookies, something, one. Don't say 5, don't say 10, don't say 22, one. One simple gesture a day is all we need to make an incredibly profound difference in Klal Yisrael. So dear friends, these are the lessons that I'm thinking about as we go into Rosh Hashana 5781. Lesson 1, the importance of the mask. Let us recommit ourselves to taking our speech more seriously, to being careful what we say, avoiding negative speech, deconstructive speech, but also using our speech to build others up. Lesson number 2, the need for distance. Let's identify the things in which we fail, the sinful activity or behavior that we engage in, but it's not just enough to cease from sinning. Let's identify the steps and the triggers that lead us down that dark road, and distance ourselves from those steps and from those triggers in order to be successful in life. Lesson number 3, search for the vaccine. If I have a problem, fix it. Don't run from it. Don't pretend it away. Don't wish it away. Don't ignore it away, because it's not going away. Find your personalistic vaccine. Address your issues, address your problems, and find a solution. Lesson number 4, do not live with the anxiety of the unknown. Coronavirus has taught us we cannot predict tomorrow, so just maximize today. Take advantage of your opportunities even if you are not assured of success. Do not tether yourself to a present mediocrity because it's known, because you're simply too afraid or have no assurances for the unknown. Lesson number 5, take responsibility for your children. Schools are great. Day schools are great. Yeshivas are great. Girls' schools are great. All schools are great. All schools are great. But no one replaces a parent. You and you alone have the responsibility to instill within your child the proper morals, the proper ethics, the proper ethos of what it means to be a good Jew, a halachic Jew, a passionate Jew, and a committed Jew. And lesson number 6, never forget the power of a simple gesture. One small act of kindness a day. Just one, not 2. I'm asking you, don't do 2. Don't do 3. No, don't be a high achiever. Don't say, I did 10. 1. Because if you commit to 1 a day, it's sustainable. You commit to 5 a day, it's not sustainable. One simple gesture of chesed a day. Dear friends, these are the things that I am thinking about as I go into Rosh Hashana Tavshin Pei Aleph 5781. Because, like Churchill, I believe never let a great crisis go to waste. I feel on a personal level that I have not yet changed as a result of this pandemic. I have not yet done the personal work that I need to do. Unfortunately, the pandemic is still going on. Fortunately, that means I still have the ability to tap into that dynamic of change. Over this Yom Tov of Rosh Hashana, I will begin to think about what I need to do to make my life more meaningful, to make my existence more purposeful. I will think about what I need to do to build myself into the best version of me. I am ready to undertake this journey, and I hope that Emir Hashem, each of you, will take it along with me. I take this opportunity to wish all of you, our Kehila, our extended viewership, Aksila v'Chasima Tova. Should be a beautiful year filled with health for all humanity, bracha, blessing, mazel, simcha. Should be the year, Emir Hashem, of incredible geula, incredible redemption. The year in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu finally allows the Melech HaMashiach to come, to take us back to Eretz Yisrael, and to rebuild our Beis HaMikdash Mehira B'Yameinu. Amen.